Hello and welcome. This is Sabrina, and you are listening to Stylish and Sustainable. Thank you so much for sitting down and taking some time with me this week. This week, we are going to be chatting just really fast about habits and how habits affect our ability to live sustainably, not only for ourselves, but also for the planet and for people around us. So, without any further ado, let's dive in. So I'm just going to take this episode, honestly, to kind of get real with you guys. I have some pretty bad habits. I think we all do if we really think about it. I recently realized I have just this really bad habit of overcommitting to things, which, if I'm actually honest, I know that I've had this habit for a while and I've known about it. But what I really recently realize is that it just leads me to kind of lose track of things that I love, and I end up just having no time to do the things that make me happy. Not only does that make things like slow living really challenging for me, but it's also just kind of a pain in the ass for my general overall sanity. I'm sure that you guys have maybe a similar habit, or maybe you have totally a different habit. Maybe you feel like you don't have, the drive to commit yourself to things. Or maybe you have habits like my other habit. Like, I always notice that when I'm bored, I do a lot of online shopping, or I get sucked into the scroll on Instagram, or during that wonderful time of the month, I get sucked into like negative self-images, or I can be really reactive to the people that I love. I have all of these habits, right? And I am sure that you have habits as well that you recognize are there, but it's not been big enough to change them. You've not had a interesting enough reason or a strong enough reason to change the habits that you have. Everyone has habits, and the problem is not so much that the habit exists, but the fact that most habits come with negative consequences. Habits in and of themselves are just not sustainable, and that's primarily because a habit is usually devoid of intentional thought. Our actions are less thoughtful and more pre-programmed reactions when they're habits, right? And we make decisions that usually end up harming ourselves and others when we're reacting instead of thoughtfully acting. A habit essentially is just a continual loop where we react the same way over and over to essentially the same stimuli. When we put habits in the context of living sustainably, if it's our habit to always, for instance, buy food out in single-use containers, or to drive everywhere, or to eat the cheapest wherever we go rather than what's really healthy or organic, we create a lot of waste, and we end up supporting companies we probably wouldn't want to support if we stop to think. But because we're caught in that loop, the react sort of mindset of a habit, we don't have the time to take action in a thoughtful way. So then the question is, how do we kick habits if we know that they're bad for the environment, they're bad for our personal health, and for the most part, usually they're bad for the relationships that we have with people that we value? Well, the first thing we got to do is just recognize that we have them. That's the first step. Take a second to think about things you find yourself doing a lot, any loops you feel like you're stuck in, anything that you feel like you continually see yourself doing that you don't feel like you have much control of. And then the second step is we got to start acting against them. Even if we only catch ourselves 50% of the time at the beginning, then at least we're kind of cultivating a habit of noticing when we're making decisions that are reactive or habitful decisions rather than thoughtful, active thoughts. A great way to combat a bad habit is to have a good habit in your back pocket to do instead when you notice that you're about to fall into a bad habit. For example, if you carry a reusable mug with you, then when you fall into a habit of buying coffee out or a hot drink or anything for that matter that would go in a mug, you have an opportunity to stop that habit of using a single use and use a cup instead. Or if you clean up your bike and you put it somewhere that's really accessible, when you catch yourself falling into that habit of driving somewhere that's actually really close by, it's easy to change your course and take the bike instead. So understanding that you're going to mess up, but having that good habit to fall back on is really, really important. So your homework this week is really simple. Just make a list of 3 habits that are either bad for you, the planet, or people around you, or all 3, and figure out some good habits that you can kind of supplement those bad habits with, or that you can have in your back pocket for when you fall back into those loops. For me, my main goal is to make sure that I stop overcommitting this week. And I'm also going to work for sure on scrolling less on Instagram. And also, I think I'm probably going to prioritize the online shopping thing because it's such a challenge, not only for packaging, but also it's just a waste of time because most of the time I don't end up buying anything anyways. I'm sure you can relate. Even if you decide you don't want to dive into taking action into the 3 habits that you identify, at least you've had a chance to think about it, and it'll give you some information to move forward a little more consciously with. Thanks, you guys, for tuning into this super short episode about habits. Next week, we're going to be sitting down and talking with Libby from the Northern Dyer. She is amazing. She works with plant dyes, and she's going to be talking about something that I'm really interested in, which is dyeing with food waste. So tune in next week for our episode with Libby. Thanks, you guys, for spending time with me. As always, have a great week. Sending good vibes.